How much house can I actually afford? It's the most important question in the home buying process, yet it's one of the hardest to get a clear answer to. Maybe you don't want to call a lender yet because you're not even sure if you want to buy a house. But the information you're finding online is almost more confusing than it is helpful. If this sounds familiar to you, you've come to the right place. I'm going to give you a free calculator that goes far beyond anything else you'll find online, and we're going to walk through it together step by step. By the end of this video, you're going to have a crystal clear picture of exactly how much house you can as well as should afford. My name is Michael. I own a local real estate brokerage here in the Dallas area. And if you're looking to buy or sell in the Dallas area, whether it's next week or next year, I'd love to connect. I've helped every one of these yellow dots find their little piece of Texas, and I'd love to help you too. Just call, text, or shoot me an email. All that info is in the description below. Okay, now before we begin, there are a few things I need to address. First of all, I'm not a lender. I can't qualify you for a mortgage. This video is for educational purposes only, just to get you started on your real estate journey. Next, neither your agent nor your lender is going to be able to tell you what you should spend on a mortgage. They can tell you what you're allowed to spend based on current lending guidelines as well as your debt to income ratio, but you need to have a pretty good idea of your monthly budget in order to get the most out of this exercise. Also, this calculator will likely estimate lower than what you can actually afford. So don't be discouraged if right out the gate it gives you a number that's lower than you were expecting, because in reality, you're probably going to buy down some of your mortgage rate, you might buy down your mortgage insurance, or you might have the seller pay to buy down both of these. Another example is you might use some of your cash to finish paying off your car loan. If that were to free up, let's say $375 a month in your budget, you'd now be able to afford $50,000 more house. So the true amount that you're actually going to be able to afford is going to involve some strategy, which is why you need a great agent who can send you to a great lender, and we all work together as a team to figure this out. So just know this calculator is as good as it gets without getting any problem solvers involved for your specific situation. But in reality, you're probably going to be able to afford more than whatever this calculator tells you. Lastly, if you want to go through this live with me, you should be doing this from a computer. It is possible to do it from your phone's web browser or even the Google Sheets app, but trust me, you'll have a way better experience if you just wait till you get to a computer. Okay, step one, if you haven't already, go and download the calculator by using the link in the description below. This link will make a copy of the calculator, which is a Google Sheet, into your Google Drive. Think of it as an Excel spreadsheet, but you can access it online at all times through your Google account. So you do need a Google account to use this, but I would be very surprised if you don't have one by now. Also, because the file is getting copied directly into your Google account, we will never have access to any data you input in there. Your copy will live solely on your drive. If you've already done that, you can come down here to the bottom to page 2, which says your info. This is where we're going to input everything. So the first box we encounter, this is down payment. And what you can do here is, if you know the loan type you're going to use, if you're using USDA or VA, you'll be able to put 0% down. If you're a conventional first-time buyer, you can put 3% down. If you're FHA, you can put as little as 3.5%. If you're a conventional home buyer who already has owned a home within the last 3 years, then 5% is going to be your minimum. And if you want to put any more than that, just choose any of these. I always recommend putting down the minimum. I'm going to pretend I am a second-time buyer, so I'm going to put it 5% down. Here you just need to put in the current interest rate to see what today's rates are. Just click this link. This takes you to Mortgage News Daily, whatever you're looking for. If you're looking for a 30-year fix, today would be a great day. We just had a huge drop. So if you're looking for a 30-year fix, 15-year fixed, whatever you're looking for, FHA, VA, you just pick whatever's on here. So we're doing a 30-year fixed conventional. It's a 7.4 today. So we're going to go back to our calculator and we're going to type 7.4, hit enter. We want a 30-year, though. If you wanted to do 15, 20, anything else, you can put it in there. Now, property tax rate, this is important as it's calculated on the total value of the home, but you just want to get as close as possible for now. So you can start here going to the property tax map. I live in Texas, so you'll see here it says 1.6, though the city and the county could potentially have more taxes. So you kind of need to do a little bit of research on your specific area, but this is a good starting point. So Texas has high property taxes because we have no state income tax. So this may be way high for you depending on where you're looking at. And here in Texas, it could be anywhere from 1.6 to 2.8%. Then you've got to factor in your homestead exemption, and then you've got to factor in that the county probably has the home you're buying assessed lower than the value you're going to purchase it for, so your taxes would be lower. So it's very hard to calculate it exactly. Just get as close as you can. Living here in Dallas, knowing I'm going to have a homestead exemption, I'm going to go with 2%. So just do your best. It's not the end of the world if you can't figure it out. The insurance rate, if you don't know, I would just leave the default number. 0.6% is pretty good. Now the mortgage insurance rate, anytime you put less than 20% down, you're going to have to buy a mortgage insurance. And the mortgage insurance is different for different loan types. So make sure you pick the correct loan type. I'm going to say conventional and I have good credit. I'm going to say use good credit as long as you're above about a 740. If you're under a 740, I would do fair credit, and this will change the numbers. So I'm going with good credit. The area I'm looking in does not have an HOA, but if you know that yours does, just look for an average HOA and make sure to put it in because that will affect your numbers greatly. Next important number is your tax rate. So based on the numbers you're about to put in, you'll be able to see your net income here, and then if you don't know your tax bracket already, you can click the link. So for the example we're looking at, I believe their net income was around $113,000 as a couple. So they would be between 94 and 201, so they're going to be at the 22% tax rate. So I go back here, I've already got it in there at 22%. So as you can see, this is very easy to use. You can knock this out in 1 minute, and then we move on to the next, which is income and debts. So if it's just you, you'll put your income here, and this is your gross income. If you have a co-borrower, your spouse, for example, you would put their income here. In this example, we have somebody making $85,000 with a spouse who makes $60,000. And if you've had a significant change in your income over the last year, I would recommend putting the average of your last 2 years' salary. And if you're self-employed, you're probably going to have to go to a lender to get an accurate picture. All of the write-offs you take count against you. So even if you make a lot of money, if you have a lot of write-offs, the bank is going to see it as you don't make very much money. So if you're self-employed like I am, don't worry, there are still plenty of strategies to get you where you need to be, but it's not something that's simple enough to cover in this video. So if this is you, just call me and let's talk through your situation. My number is in the description below. Okay, so you've put in your income for both people. Now we're going to look at your debts. Something important to know about debts is debts are things that have one big payment that we ultimately have to pay down. Expenses do not. Lenders don't care about your expenses, they only care about your debts. So car insurance, for example, you have to have it if you own a vehicle, but because there's never a lump sum that you have to pay down, it's not a debt. It's just an expense. So you can see here, regular debts people have: car loans, student loans, credit cards, personal loans, rental property mortgages, alimony, child support, anything that's required every month and has a lump sum that you pay down at some point. So in this example, our borrower one has a $350 car payment and he has credit card payments of $150. Now something important to note is you may be paying down more than $150 for your credit cards, but all the lender's looking at is what is the minimum required payment across all of your credit cards. So this person's minimum required payments on those credit cards is $150 a month. Then we go look at borrower two. Borrower two has $300 a month of student loans and a car of $350 a month. So remember, it's very important that you do not put your expenses in the debt category. And that's it. So this should take you like 2 minutes, and now we get to move on to the fun part, the affordability dashboard. So head down to the bottom and click number 3, your affordability dashboard. Okay, so what you see here at the top is our suggested maximum. We suggest a moderate financial comfort level. And again, this is the maximum suggested, so don't feel like you need to go here. This is not what you should do. That's going to depend totally on your lifestyle and your financial comfort levels. So this is a quick glance of what a moderate financial comfort level is, but as you'll see here, we have cautious, traditional, moderate, assertive, and risky. All these levels show you is how much of your net income is going towards your housing payment. So at cautious, it's only 24%. Traditional is 34, moderate is 43, assertive is 51, and risky is up to 58. And something you should also know is that different loan types have different limits. For example, if you're wanting to buy a $700,000 house with a minimum down of 3.5%, you're not going to be able to do it on an FHA loan because that would be outside of the loan limits. So if you're considering doing that or doing USDA, then you can click for more info here, as well as conventional loan limits, because there are limits to those as well. You can't buy a $1.5 million house on a conventional limit, at least not in most states. There are different maximums for some high expense states. So let's take a quick look at the map just to give you an example. So for example, looking at the conforming loan limit values map, if you live somewhere, for example, like Los Angeles County, your loan limit is actually going to be $1,089,300 for a single family home, whereas if you live anywhere in most of the other country, your conventional loan limit is going to be $726,200. So you take that loan limit plus whatever your down payment is, that's what you can buy on a conventional loan. So if you get a high number up here, just make sure to double check the loan limits if you're anything above 700. But before we move on, I want to take a quick look at this, even though it's obviously labeled information. If you were to go with the moderate level, which is 43% of your net income, you'd have a max purchase price around $439,000. Your total monthly payment would be just over $4,000, and you can see it all broken down here. Principal and interest would be $2,887. Your property taxes would be $731. Homeowners insurance of $219. Mortgage insurance of $208. And of course, we put $0 of homeowners association. Your down payment, the 5% we wanted to put, is $21,942, but you also have estimated closing cost of $10,093. And I'm not going to go into closing costs here because I made a very detailed video on it that I'll link above so you can watch that after, but it'll walk you through literally all of the closing costs. As well as you should keep in mind that a seller can pay for all these closing costs for you. The only thing that you have to come up with is this number, the down payment. That has to come from you. It can come as a gift from a family member, but a seller can't pay towards your down payment. But a seller can pay for all of your closing costs. Now there are limits. For example, on a conventional loan, a seller can pay all of your closing costs up to 3% of the sales price. But don't worry about that now, and I've made another video on that as well. So I'll link a few videos throughout here, and at the end, just make sure you go and watch them. But just know that a seller can pay all of your closing costs. You can get them wrapped into the loan. We're gonna keep moving for now. But just remember, it's not just your 5% down payment, you're also gonna have estimated closing costs of this much. So some people come to me expecting, well, I've got 10 grand, that's 3%. And though it's possible we can get the rest of it wrapped in the loan, it's always better if you do have that amount just in case, because not every seller is gonna cooperate. You may get into a multiple offer situation where that's not an option. So it's always best, if possible, to have the total cash that you might need. Okay, moving on. The rest of the sheet is dependent here. You need to select the loan that best aligns with your financial comfort level, which we just referenced here. So if you think, you know what, I could go up to 43%, or you think I could only go up to 34%, you would pick traditional. For this example, I'm just gonna stick to moderate. And if you're somewhere in between these two, don't worry, we're gonna have you covered here in a minute, because most likely you are gonna be. You're gonna be not at 438, not at 347, you're gonna be somewhere in the middle. But this drop down will change everything below, so make sure you select the one that most represents where you think you want to be. Next, we're looking at extra costs of owning a home, and this is just something to be aware of. These things may already be in your budget, but I just want you to be aware in case they're not. So obviously the mortgage payment is the biggest chunk of your expenses, but you also have to factor in utilities because you may be moving from a small apartment into a larger home. Or you may be moving from a larger rental into a smaller home, and then it goes backwards. But basically, this is just a helpful estimate to help you refine your budget. So let's say the homes you're looking at, you know they're gonna be around 2,000 square feet. You have a drop down here, so I think that moderate is a good middle ground for everyone. If you have a very energy efficient home, you could put low, and then that drops it down to $120 a month instead of $200 a month. Or if utilities are already factored into your budget, you can put none here. And then your maintenance savings per year, this is, let's say you get a big hailstorm and you need to pay the insurance claim for the roof, or you have a plumbing leak, or any number of these things. You want to be putting something away in savings. And again, that might already be in your budget. If it's not, we suggest doing moderate here, which is 0.5% of the purchase price every year, which comes out to $182.85 a month. So we're going to assume you didn't put any of those in your budget, so we're going to put them both at moderate. And this is going to give you a much clearer picture of the total housing costs. So it's not just the mortgage, it's also your utilities and maintenance. If you add those together, your estimated monthly cost actually goes up to $44.29 a month. So this is the number you need to look at. This comes to 47% of your total take-home pay of $9,425 a month. So after you've paid all of this housing expense, the number you need to look at is right here in the middle of this paragraph. After paying mortgage plus other costs, you will have $4,996 left over for all of your other expenses. That's your car payments, your groceries, your gas, whatever other bills you have. So $4,996 is what you would have to work with based on what you showed earlier. So now at this point, you go look at your budget and see how much are all of my other expenses. If they're less than $4,996, then this is probably within your budget. If your other expenses, including your savings, including your giving, including everything else, is only $4,000 a month, then this is actually pretty low. You're going to be saving an additional $996 that wasn't even in your savings category of your budget. So this would be well within your range at that point. And this is why it varies so much, because some people have very low expenses. Some people have very high expenses, and they may need this number to be more like $6,000 or $7,000 just to survive. So there's no one-size-fits-all answer, but this is the main number you're looking for. If $4,996 fits in your budget, then I would say you could afford this house. So let's keep going. We already saw this, the down payment. This just shows you the closing costs. Typical, I would say, is 2.3%. If you think it's going to be a little higher where you're at, or a little lower if you think the seller's going to pay for some things. Maybe you have to pay for the title policy because it's very competitive. You might move this up to 3%. But otherwise, I'm just going to leave it at 2.3%. Just keep in mind, it's around that $32,000 is what you should have. Again, the seller can pay for all of this. You can watch that other video which explains it in detail. Now we're moving on to what happens in those middle ground numbers that we were talking about. So your baseline is around that 439, but the next lowest in the drop down is 347, and maybe you know that's way too low. So let's take a look down here. Looking at your baseline of 49, you could go 10% lower and you'd be at 394. So that still may be a very reasonable number for you, and you'd be saving $405 a month versus the maximum. So this is just a quick math. If I want to go 5% lower, I'm at 417, $202 a month lower. So let's say you looked at your budget and you had that $4,998 number and you were actually $400 short, so you couldn't afford it. Well, you could come here and you see this is $400 lower, so I actually could afford about $395,000 house. And I'm going to give you another, and what I think is probably a better way to look at this is this calculator right here. This is estimating the change in mortgage payment per $10,000 change in purchase price. So what this means is, in order to afford $10,000 more house is only going to cost you $75 a month, as well as if you buy a house that's $10,000 lower, it's going to save you $75 a month. So if you're looking on Zillow and you see a house that's $400 and you see another house that's $410, you'll know that those two are only going to be a $75 a month payment. And another useful way to use this, as you'll see in that video I've been referencing, is if you need to wrap $10,000 of your closing costs into the loan, you'll know that that's just going to raise your monthly payment by $75. So if it's a $400,000 home and the seller's not budging on the price, you could offer $410,000 and have the seller pay all $10,000 of your closing costs. So you didn't have to come up with $10,000 out of pocket, and all that happened is your monthly payment went up $75, which is a lot easier for a lot of people than coming up with an extra 10 grand. And this is something I kind of alluded to earlier. Let me just give you one simple example of how you might be able to afford a lot more house by using this. If you were able to use some of the cash that you had saved for your closing costs to pay off, let's say you only have $3,000 or $5,000 left on your car loan, well, you can now use the cash to pay that down while the seller pays for that portion of your closing costs. But let's say your car payment was $375. So you just used $3,000 of your cash to knock out $375 off your budget. So now you've got $375 free in your budget, and you know every $75 is going to get you $10,000 more house. Well, now that $375 a month, instead of being used for your car, since it's paid off, can be used towards your house, and now you just afforded $50,000 more house, because remember, 75 gets you 10,000 more house. So 375 gets you 50,000 more house. And if that's confusing, watch this video. It explains it in much more detail, and that way I don't have to spend any more time on it here. And the last point I'm going to make here is this is why I always personally put the minimum down on the house, because every $10,000 you sink into this house is only saving you $75 a month. So I always ask people, what's easier to come by, $10,000 or $75 a month? Obviously $75 a month. If you buy this house, sink all your cash into it, and you have an emergency, you're now going to be cash poor, and that may even cause you to lose the house. Getting that money back out of the house is crazy expensive. You're either going to have to sell the house, which is very expensive, or if it's appreciated enough, you might be able to do a cash out refinance and get some of it back out, but it's going to cost you close to $5 grand to refinance. And you're going to have to deal with whatever mortgage rates are then. So just my personal opinion, I take the higher payment and I keep a stack of cash in the bank. Imagine this, you get laid off for 6 months. Would you rather have an extra 50 grand in the bank to live on, or a house payment that's $375 a month lower? Because that's a real scenario, and those are the actual numbers. 50 grand in the bank versus $375 a month saved. Okay, last part of this calculator is just this. You know your moderate max price, so that was your $4,046. Let's say you get on Zillow and you find a house that's $390,000. Then you can go, wow, that's going to be $450 a month lower. So you should be able to use this as well as your quick math of $10,000 to very quickly and easily know how much more or less home you can afford based on your budget. Now moving on, we have how do lenders look at your debt to income ratio. I'm not going to go through all this now because a lot of people don't care, but if you do, just read through this. It is an explanation of how they get to your max payment. They have a front end ratio, they have a back end ratio, and then they choose the lowest of those two. And again, I'll let you read through it. It's thorough here. That's how they come up with it. And of course, the housing payment must include the principal, interest, taxes, mortgage insurance, homeowner's insurance, and HOA fees. So it is very important if you have an HOA, put that in there. Because again, if your HOA is $75 a month, then that means you can now afford $10,000 less house to live in that neighborhood. So every dollar in every one of these categories, you can see how much it counts now. If you can cut $75 out of your budget somewhere to use towards a house, you just afforded $10,000 more house. So really every penny counts here. If you've gotten any value from this video, I'd love if you gave it a thumbs up so more people can see it. So, what are your next steps? First, you need to refine your budget and make sure you're crystal clear on all of your expenses. Then, I want you to spend some time considering how much down payment is right for you. Now that you know every $10,000 you sink into the house is only going to lower your monthly payment by $75. Then, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I have a library of helpful videos there that you can access just like this, and they're being updated all the time. And lastly, just call me. Even if you aren't planning to buy for a year, let's make a game plan and make sure that whenever the time is right, you're already fully informed and ready to go. All of my info is in the description below. If you got any value from this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider sharing it with a friend. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.